Hi, I'm Carol Baskin, and welcome to the Cat Chat Show. Today with me is Sharon Guynup and Steve Winter, and they have just come out with a wonderful new book called Tigers Forever, Saving the World's Most Endangered Big Cat. And so I really want to thank both of you for joining me today, and I'd love to know more about how your lives kind of came together and culminated in this fabulous book.
Well, first off, thanks for having us on your podcast
thanks.
today. Steve's journey started before mine with tigers. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I was in Myanmar or Burma in 2000 doing a expedition with Dr. Alan Rabinowitz, and on the way back in the airplane, you go see that big expanse of green in the distance. He said that's called the Valley of Death. You should do a story about it. So that eventually you write a proposal. National Geographic says yes, and I go on a story that would be about the creation of the world's largest tiger reserve and the issues that surround creating a quote national park, about whether there's animals there, what kind, how many, and the human influence on habitat destruction and the usage of natural resources that local people use, you know, whether it's cutting bamboo or getting palm fronds for houses, or in this instance, panning for gold.
Wow.
So that started off Steve's work with tigers. That was the Hukong Valley, called the Valley of Death because so many people died there during World War II. Also, you know, malaria, just very, very intense place to be. But there were almost no tigers there. Even though it was the largest physical area for tigers in the world, there was just such intense poaching, both of their prey and tigers, and such an influx of miners, gold miners, into this area. There were no tigers. But then he went on to do a story in Kaziranga National Park where there's possibly the highest density of tigers anywhere in the world. So he did that, and he realized that Kaziranga was an anomaly. That
For many reasons.
Tigers are really not doing that well in many places. So he did a tiger story. So
Kaziranga helped show me tigers. Burma helped show me the Asian jungle. Yes, there were tigers there, just not very many, and the intense pressure of being close to China and poaching was a real education for me. But I loved Kaziranga. I got to see my first tiger, got one of my most accessible tiger images ever, and then decided that we really needed to do another tiger story at National Geographic magazine. And I wanted to visit 2 locations of subspecies that had never been included in previous stories on tigers before. Probably because you would never see them, that's why. Sumatran and the Indo-Chinese were in Thailand is the area that I decided to work, because it was the only place I felt that I could have a quote guarantee of getting camera trap images of tigers. Same in Sumatra, I was able to get an incredible shot of a tiger there, and then head to India after that. But to really delve into the situation of the world's largest cat and how important it is for us to save these big cats and their homes, and how important saving the homes is to us as humanity.
It was after that, after he'd done the tiger story, that we realized that tigers are on life support. And that's why we decided to do Tigers Forever. We really wanted the opportunity to, again, you know, put tigers, you know, out in front of people and just say, look, you see them in zoos, you see them in circuses, they're very common animals. Most people don't realize that they're almost gone. So we really wanted the platform to speak up and say, there's 3,200 tigers left in the wild. You know, that's split amongst 5 subspecies. The 6th subspecies, the South China tiger, exists only in captivity. And those 3,200 tigers are scattered in small pockets across somewhere between 11 and 13 countries. We're not sure whether there's still any in Vietnam or Cambodia. So, and about half, a little more than half, are in India. The Bengal tigers in India are possibly the best hope for saving these cats. So we did the book. I wrote the book. It's Steve's magnificent images. And then we went on the road and we started lecturing and speaking to the media and speaking up for tigers in any way we possibly can. There's a very important meeting coming up next week. The CITES Standing Committee is meeting, and tigers are on the agenda. If we don't save them soon, tigers are going to disappear within our lifetimes in the wild. And captive tigers have never been successfully reintroduced to the wild.
You know, I think that's such an important part of what you guys are doing out there, because for the last 200 years, zoos have, well, it's only been, cats have been in captivity for at least the last 200 years, very broadly. But in the recent years, the zoos have said that the reason they do this is to protect them for future generations. And I think it's had exactly the opposite impact, because people can see them at their local mall or at the fair or at, I'm sorry, that's my ringtone.
Hey, you have a good ringtone, though.
That's a lion, actually, but...
Quiet mine, too. There we go.
But they are so common in captivity that people don't realize what danger they are in the wild. And so I think you, with your incredible images and your storytelling ability, bring this message to people in a way that there's no way a captive animal ever could or should, because the wild is where we really need to be concentrating our efforts.
Well, that's probably the most important thing that we've found is answering why we should save tigers, because people do ask that question. And how do you connect the viewer to something halfway around the world? It's something that they do see in zoos, but to make the plight of tigers and their future personal for the people that have a desire to see them in the wild for the future. So we're trying to make that connection and find the answer to, you know, what can we do to save them in reality, which is, we think many things. Obviously, habitat loss is number one, but stopping the demand for tiger parts in China is, we think, the number one thing that we can do. Habitat loss is really difficult. That's working with companies and governments to stop cutting down forests in tiger land and protect what is there now protected.
But the Chinese demand at this point in time is wiping wild tigers off the map. I had an op-ed in last Sunday's New York Times that addressed this very directly. Starting around 1993, when China officially banned tiger bone in the country, any kind of trade in tiger bone, they started farming tigers. They've gone from about 80 tigers in 1993 to well over 5,000 tigers in captive breeding facilities today. And the skins and the bones, the skins are used for luxury decor, the bones for tiger bone wine, are high-end products that are consumed by mostly the newly wealthy and government officials. These are very expensive items. And the demand is growing, and it's growing because the farms are making them more available. And although it's supposedly not legal, it not only is happening, but the trade is growing. And as long as tiger farms are feeding tiger parts into this murky trade that we don't even really know how much of it's going on, how much governments are turning a blind eye. We don't really know what's going on there until that demand is stopped by closing down the farms and by China committing to international conservation and enforcement efforts. Tigers are going to continue to disappear. And that's exactly what's on the agenda at the upcoming CITES meeting.
And you are absolutely right that it's counterintuitive. You would think, well, if you farm the animals, then it takes the pressure off, but it does not, because people who can afford it, and as you noted, China is newly wealthy, they always want the premier product, the wild tiger, and so that's what even increases that poaching for those wild tigers. I think there's a line to be drawn as well between the U.S. captive population of tigers and tigers disappearing in the wild. And I think we have the same issue here, but like you said, it's really hard to prove it, because we estimate, and when I say we, it was the Humane Society of the United States, the International Fund for Animal Welfare, the World Wildlife Fund, Born Free, Big Cat Rescue. We all got together in July of 2011 to try and figure out how to deal with the big cat crisis in America. And what we calculated was that conservatively 200 tiger cubs a year are being bred for these pay-to-play sessions where people pay to have their picture made with a cub, but they can only use them until they're 12 weeks old, and then they end up disappearing. Well, where are those 200 cats a year going? And it seems to be not a coincidence that the U.S. has the second largest consumption of illegal tiger parts. So I would really love to see our federal bill pass that would ban the private possession of these cats before anything can really be done to save these cats in the wild.
I hadn't heard that about U.S. being the second largest consumer. What parts are Americans consuming?
I've only read reports, and I haven't been involved in the actual investigation, but I've read so many times people saying that that the U.S. is second only to China in the consumption of tiger parts, and I'm assuming there are people who know better than I do how that's happening or where that's happening. I recently saw a report that was talking about all of the stuff that they seize at the airports, but these tigers are being bred here captively. But still, I think when you are fueling that trade and fueling that desire or stimulating that market for tiger parts, that of course people who can afford the real tiger are the ones that are going to be paying for those poached tigers from the wild.
This is a minor point, but back in May, I believe, possibly April, Texas Senator Ted Cruz posted a picture on Facebook of himself with a tiger skin with one of his colleagues, and it was essentially, went shopping for my office today. And he was kneeling down with the rug had a head, and obviously he had no idea, or didn't care, I'm not sure which way it goes, that this is an endangered species. All trade in this product is illegal. When the Washington Post and other media outlets blogged and wrote about this, there was no real public statement about it. It was just kind of pushed off. But it's a real problem, in this situation where China is receiving pressure from the world community to stop these farms that are specifically for the trade. Unlike ours, we don't know what they're for. But it's not the same. We don't consume tiger parts in anywhere near the same amount as the Chinese do. We're trying to influence them to shut down this commercial business, while our own leaders, appear on Facebook and social media, buying illegal tiger parts. It's really a problem.
We have no credibility in the world economy to even suggest that they shut down tiger farms when we don't even know where our tigers are. They will argue, at least we know where our tigers are.
We need to do some investigation.
It's on my list.
You guys would be the people to do it.
We would like to. It's something that is near and dear to us, and now we've come this far, we want to keep doing it. I'm working on another big cat for National Geographic now, But obviously, tigers will always be extremely important to us, and we'll keep fighting the fight for the most popular animal in the world, the tiger, and the world's largest cat. So we'll keep fighting to try to find this connection that we can make to people's lives about the tiger. I mean, guys like Jackie Chan have done an incredible job in China, you know, doing public service announcements in English and Chinese, and it's very important what Jackie has done to help stem the tide of this in the younger generations. I mean, shark fins were outlawed, so that's good, and the consumption dropped dramatically in 1 year. So Jackie's saying, I was forced to take tiger bone when I was a young martial artist, and rhino horn also, and he says, don't do it.
He says, didn't do any good.
Yeah, it didn't do any good.
That's all well and good, though, but I really think that it's not the general population in China that is consuming tigers. It truly is the elite. It's the Donald Trumps of China, and the you know, the Ted Cruzes of China that are the ones that are feeding this demand. So, you know, public opinion, I think, is much more important with other traditional Chinese medicine products. Frankly, Donald Trump doesn't care what I think, so I really don't think that, you know, the pressure really needs to come from top government officials that realize that this is a corruption-based trade and that it's really giving China a black eye. And I think that's, if change is going to come and they are going to close down the farms, it will more be for those reasons.
Do you guys have any plans on translating your book into Chinese? It's so rich with beautiful graphics. It seems like that's your market.
No, Geographic didn't do that. And in fact, because of the content, you know, we celebrate the tiger. We talk about, you know, Steve's field experiences and how he got those photographs, and also, you know, some of the very intense situations he found himself in as he was working on this story that are real metaphors for the threats facing tigers. But because we mentioned China, we mentioned Tibet, Chinese publishers wouldn't print this book. Usually National Geographic prints their books in China, but this had to be printed in Hong Kong instead.
Oh my goodness.
But it doesn't mean that it couldn't be translated if there was an interest. It's all about funds, you know. If we could find a Chinese publisher, there would be no doubt that it would be translated and published there. But that's handled by the marketing end and all that, so we don't do that. We'd like it, obviously. It'd be great.
That's such a beautiful book, and you can't look at those animals.
If anybody knows a Chinese publisher that wants to work with National Geographic to print this, let's go for it.
I'm sorry we interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just going on and on about how beautiful the book is. It's just exquisite. And I'm not good on names, so I did not realize who Steve Winter was until I saw some of the images that you sent me. And as soon as I saw the images, I was like, oh, that guy! Yes, I know that picture. I knew the pictures. And some of your pictures have just been... The one that probably touched me more than any other photograph I think I've ever seen in my entire life was the cougar in front of the Hollywood sign, because that really brought it home to me that these cats are living right here in our own backyard, and we can't even protect them here, and yet we're still, you know, trying to get in other people's business around the world and influence them when we're doing such a lousy job here.
Well, that was very important to me, to help show that we live with wildlife, but in many instances, some of these big cat species are some of the most secretive animals on the planet. So the fact that P22 in Griffith Park, or the other mountain lions that live north of LA in the Santa Monica National Recreation Area, are very secretive animals, and we will not see them as long as they feel secure and they have a food source. That was, when you do a story about mountain lions, you have two things. Well, they're both extremely important. The changing lives of mountain lions in the West, where I was working the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and now with the reintroduction of wolves, the lives of mountain lions become like they used to be before the influx of humanity into their area and the eradication of their predators, which were wolves, and the introduction of grizzly bears. So everything's going back to the way it used to be.
Wow.
So that's extremely interesting. And but then also areas that mountain lions have always lived, where cities are expanding and the mountain lions are still there. And like I said, as long as they have a food source, they are not going to come into communities and take out dogs or cats, or eat deer, or that are eating somebody's grass on the edge of their property or something like that. They won't, because they're not interested in having any interaction with humanity, but they are there. And the cat that ended up by the Hollywood sign was trying to disperse. He was looking for his own home, and his home is surrounded by the Pacific Ocean and some of the largest freeways in the United States. So he found a way to make it to Griffith Park, but then luckily he found a refuge. It was a refuge without a female. At the time he was only 2 years old, so he didn't think about it. But it had plenty of food. And no one's ever seen him until he got affected with the rodenticide and mange, and that was affecting his brain. And
that story is that much of that area was planted with all kinds of ground cover, and because of the warmth and that kind of plant life, they actually have serious rodent problems even in Beverly Hills. So rodenticide is used freely, which works its way up the food chain, and in top predators like the cougar, it really makes them ill, knocks down their immune system, and
brings on mange.
And that's how he got mange.
And
he's been in the press lately, like looking not so good. They have caught him. They've kind of keep recapturing him and trying to treat him, and I think he's doing better. But it's a big issue. How do you deal with wildlife within an expanding human landscape? And for tigers, Asia has an exploding human population. India unofficially has passed China as the most populous country on earth. And that's where most of the tigers are. And the center of India, the central Indian tiger landscape, it's called, that is home to a string of some of the most important reserves. But that's also where there's intense human centers. There's mining, there's roads, there's railroads, there's cities, and those tigers really have no chance of meeting up anywhere. There's no way for them to get from one reserve to another in most cases, and
which genetically is important.
They don't want them inbred, and some of them are very small reserves.
And that's the same problem they have with the cougars north of LA, is they need some DNA to be moved, between one side of the 101 and the other. And in India, you have this problem. Western Ghats is still good in the southwest of India, but that's even having roads that people are fighting, luckily, roads, dams, railroads, to cross, Tiger Range, if there's some way to put overpasses or underpasses. That would be great. That's what the mountain lions need in LA. They had the money ready 2 years ago, and they gave it to a winery instead. So what we're trying to do is we have a fundraiser in October, and I'm going to LA on Monday and to talk about this and get this underpass or overpass put on the 101 north of LA, to give all animals an opportunity to cross without dying. Mountain lion crossed in January, but went to a cement embankment, turned around, and got killed.
Oh gosh.
So, you know, we're working towards that, but human conflict is something that we always have to talk about. Lions in Africa, you know, to give people a reason to not kill them when they take out some of their cattle. This is a constant issue. Jaguars in the Central and South America. This is an issue, and then we have more conflict when we have animals in urban areas. I just spent almost 2 months in Mumbai, where there's a very stable, good leopard population in northern Mumbai in Sanjay Gandhi National Park, which is about 72 square miles.
Wow.
And most people are going to be amazed by these images of when it gets dark and people quit walking and exercising in the park. The dogs leave because there's less street dogs running around, and the leopards come out at dark, and they own that park in the nighttime.
And they not only
but then
own
nobody
the park,
sees them, you know.
but you know the human settlements are pushing up against the edges of the park, and leopards are walking through these settlements, past apartment buildings and across bridges, and again,
the pictures are absolutely incredible. But you know, I've already gotten three emails today about conflict issues from yesterday. But India is a huge country, and they have a very good leopard population because leopard's the most adaptable and most, you know, it's the cat that's probably being hammered more than any other cat because it's just forgotten. People don't think about it. They're adaptable, so they live close to humans, and they're killed without people really paying attention. Mm-hmm. And they have an enormous range from southern Africa all the way to Siberia.
Wow. Oh, I love them. Just love them.
Many of the issues, that face big cats are universal. They're wide-ranging predators, top of the food chain, hunted for their pelts and for conflict reasons. They all sometimes go after livestock or dogs or pets. The thing that is most disturbing about tigers is that they are the closest to extinction. And we've already lost 2 subspecies in the last little over 50 years. There was 2 species in Indonesia that are gone, the Javan and the Bali tiger. There's the Indo-Chinese tiger, not in good shape. The Malaysian tiger is almost gone. Siberian tiger, there's not so many left. Sumatran tiger, I think, is number 2 for the second most tigers. I think they estimating maybe 700, 750 left. So maybe 1,800 Bengal tigers. But those numbers are really small. Tigers are hanging on the edge.
And if you think about it, if we can't save the tiger, what could we save? Because everybody knows what the tiger is. I think there was some Animal Planet poll that showed that the tiger was everybody's favorite animal.
Number 1.
Yeah.
More loved than dogs.
Dogs are always 2 or 3 because it's a worldwide poll. Are dogs, but yeah, no, I mean it's 100%, and I think it's somehow connecting people to something halfway around the world, and we need to talk about saving habitats that are the Amazon is the lungs of the world. Well, we have forests here that we could equate the same. The forests are the sponges. They soak up water. They give us clean water and help with the water table. They pull carbon from the atmosphere. That's how we need to talk about saving their homes, because you need to stop hunting of their prey, which would give them security then also. And then we need to find a way to protect these protected areas that in many parts of the world aren't. They're encroached all the time. you may think, well, we have a national park, nobody would think about crossing the boundary and taking it over. Well, in many parts of the world, that's the norm. So we need to connect with saving the natural areas we have left with, protecting endangered species such as the tiger.
Steve brings up a really important point. It's not hard to save tigers, and we know how to save tigers. Tigers need food to eat and a safe place to live. That's it. And water. Given that, if they're given protection, boots on the ground protection, if they have enough space to live and breed, and enough food to eat, they're going to bounce back. It's a very productive species. A mother can have a minimum of 14 cubs in her lifetime, and about half of them usually survive to adulthood. That's a very productive species. If we can use the international tools that are available in terms of enforcement. Interpol is in the game now. They have a tiger program with all kinds of secure networks and data sharing opportunities. If we can cut the demand, and that will stop the killing, and if we can not eat away at the existing protected areas, and hopefully try to find some pathways between them, some wildlife corridors, tigers can bounce back. There is hope, but unless we do it now, I don't think tigers are going to still be around by the time I'm an old woman.
I wonder, with the level of experience that you guys have had on the ground with these issues and working with Panthera, we love Panthera, we love Alan Rabinowitz, he's my daughter and I, he's just our hero. But do you think it's something that can be fixed financially? I mean, is there a big enough, would there ever be enough tourism dollars or other types of way to make it financially appealing to these countries to protect these areas for the tigers? Or is it something that's strictly going to have to come out of the goodwill, the goodness of their hearts to change the laws and enact better laws and enforce them better?
There's some people that believe that in terms of the enforcement and community investment side of the problem, people like Bittu Segal in India believe that the only way to really, really get local people invested is to create kind of buffer zones around the tiger reserves in India, for example, where there are private sanctuaries that are very much like the private sanctuaries that are run very successfully in Africa, for safaris, not hunting safaris, tourist safaris. Those communities make a great deal of money. It's cooperatively run. They're much, much better off than they were when they were subsistence farmers. So there's people in India that are really trying to move towards that, kind of a future around particular parks in India, and it's a really great idea. So so the answer is yes. I mean, there's lots of answers to this problem. Some of them require money, some of them require guards, some of them require political solutions.
But I think at the same time you need to, if these areas are protected and they're given over to the communities, they can never be touched by mining or logging interests. And so if you put them, you have to weave politics into all this, but it's so successful in Africa that it could be done in India also, in areas that aren't under threat from resource extraction, because that's a different ballgame as far as the people in power look at it. I believe that tigers can and will have a future, because there are areas that are protected really well, but we just need to expand that throughout their range so they have room to move and places to disperse. and there's great science being done about it, and people are trying to find new answers. But I think what we need to do is connect us to the environment here and understand a little bit more of its importance in our everyday lives. And only then can we look at lions and tigers and other big cats and the large landscapes they need and realize the importance of that. And maybe then we can get that connection with the tiger halfway around the world and why we should save it.
Steve, again, makes a key point. Because these cats are wide-ranging predators, they need huge tracts of forest to survive. And if you're saving huge tracts of forest, you're giving waters the ability to clean themselves. That's drinking water for millions of people. By not cutting those trees, there's a carbon sink. It helps fight climate change. And if we were cutting those forests, it would contribute to climate change. If you're saving the top predator, you're saving every species, down the pyramid. There's this also came from our friend and colleague and mentor Bitu Segal, but he always says that by saving the tiger, we're also saving ourselves. And it's not just, kind of some glib statement. It's absolutely true.
And that's the message that people really have to understand if they're going to make changes in the way they do things or their buying habits and those kinds of things. Because if it doesn't
touch us, why should we do it? But
right.
So palm oil is a good example. But I think all this is very important to find that connection that we can give us a reason to care. We already do, but people that love tigers just find a way to do it. And Bitu is publisher of Sanctuary magazine, Sanctuary Asia, which is the first wildlife environment magazine in all of Asia. Started in Mumbai in 1981. And he's got Kids for Tigers.
He started this great program, Kids for Tigers. He has literally a few million children.
Wow!
In education programs about tigers, and these children are so dedicated to saving tigers that they march in the streets in thousands sometimes. They bury the Prime Minister's office in petitions and letters, and they're really amazing kids. So there's a lot of people that care. Steve just tossed out something a minute ago about palm oil. When he was in Sumatra, it was obvious that the entire island, except for the mountain spine that kind of runs the length of the island,
and a few isolated
and a few other places, being completely deforested for palm oil plantations. I think Indonesia, if I'm correct, is the #1 producer of palm oil.
You are correct.
And tigers can't survive in a plantation very well. There's been studies that have proven that they may be there, they may even be mating, there may even be some cubs born, but they just don't survive. There's too many people. There ends up being conflict, they end up dead. So if the forests are being raised for a product like palm oil, which becomes our cooking oil,
it's in so many.
It's a big problem.
We don't need it. It's just something else along the chain of oils. We have enough, but it's supposedly easy to grow, and they're cutting down Central America now for palm oil and South America. So it's something we can get our hands around because now it's affecting the jaguar. But while I was there, you would find, as far as the eye could see, was already cut down, but they hadn't done anything with the land. So it's like, even if the government said, okay, you can't cut down any new forest until what's already cut down is used. Well, then somebody would go, yeah, but I don't own that, and I want to start it here. Well, don't let them, because I found too much land that had been chopped, maybe logged, lost interest, decided not to do it, whatever. But the island is totally being denuded of its beautiful forests, which are home to the tiger, the orangutan, But that whole umbrella thing, save the top predator, you save everything underneath it. You know, there's a way to control and have some kind of management policy about this, so you do end up with forests left in the habitat of some of the rarest, most majestic creatures on the planet.
It would take so long for that to come back.
We manage everything else. Why can't you manage your land? You know?
And the Sumatran tiger is particularly beautiful. They have that gorgeous mane. They have more stripes. They're like, stripes are closer together. They're smaller. They're a very distinctive animal. Like,
it was the hardest picture to get too. I mean,
you don't
you
see
know,
it.
as far as go, I got 2 frames of a Sumatran tiger. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of things to be thought about. I think management is a big one. Corruption is a major issue throughout much of the world. So, you know, just managing in a business way would help us all.
So I have a question. You know, what struck you as you went through the book and raised questions that, you know, you wanted to learn more about from us today?
Well, that was a big question for me, is how do you get buy-in from people? How do you get those who live near these big cats to be happy about living near big cats? I live in Florida, and our biggest cat is an 80-pound Florida Panther, and people just have a freaking heart attack if a 25-pound bobcat walks through their yard. It's it's a fire drill around here if anybody has a Florida Panther walk through their yard, and I'm saying, take a picture, count yourself fortunate. Right. That's the happiest thing you can
people on the planet has ever seen them in the wild. So that's great. I think that's, you know, for local people, as I was talking about conflict, you know, that's probably like an umbrella also. If we start with people on the ground and give them a reason to live with these animals economically, like they're doing with a great project in Africa, living with lions. But same thing with jaguars in South America and tigers in India, to compensate, you know, for livestock losses immediately, because these parks are making money. You know,
there has to be some kind of economic benefit, and
right.
You know, if your
the
family
community programs are a way to link in that
right.
you were talking about. Namibia's got a great program with that. If they want to do it in India, then these people will benefit. But you start with the conflict first, because that riles up a village. I lost 5 cows last night. Well, if you get paid, most of them are useless because they don't eat them in India. So you might have 1 milk cow and 4 just cows. If you pay them within 24, 48 hours, that calms down everybody. They go, okay, I made more money off that cow that wasn't worth much. And then you go up the chain where they benefit from the tourism coming, you know. Benefit directly, not just, I have a cousin that works at a lodge or something like that. It's a community operation.
You know, for people that farm in rural parts of the world, in India and other countries, you know, if they lose a cow, they lose a water buffalo, they lose a goat, it's a huge economic hit to the family. Mm-hmm. So, you know, certainly these compensation programs can make up for that, but there has to be more of an incentive than that. You know, there has to be some real economic benefit for, you know, living with a big dangerous predator, and certainly the safari programs that, you know, we mentioned earlier is one way to do so. There's also, you know, some programs where there's community kind of, you know, craft programs that where, you know, women do embroidery, there's painting, there's, you know, other kinds of, you know, cultural artifacts that are then, you know, marketed to tourists, you know, with the help of NGOs.
Snow Leopard Enterprises is a perfect example.
I was wondering if you guys knew about that, because we're their 2nd largest retailer. And
well, I've never seen a project I don't know why other big cat organizations don't use that model. Well, of course, they make great product and bring it in at a cost that SLE they can work together. But I never have seen anything like it, you know. And I've never walked into a village and had a scientist treated like a conquering hero that was being welcomed. Oh, you know, we got a new teacher, we got computers, you know.
Medical clinic, you know,
yeah, medical
better school building.
You vaccinate their cows with USAID free vaccine that never makes it out there. And I pay for the vet to come to do it. You're putting 30% more money in their pocket because that's how much they, on average, lose from disease every year.
Wow.
And the name of the cat, that's a positive way of them going, I won't kill a snow leopard anymore because we are benefiting from having that animal here. And it's not direct tourism because it's so difficult to see a snow leopard.
Right.
It's keeping the habitat intact with the largest predator there. And these people love it. They love the snow leopard now.
And all of their products are made from like yak wool and llama fur. So they're all fuzzy, hot things that we sell here in Florida, which is hard enough to do. But I can imagine if you had people making handicrafts from India and selling those to protect the tiger, or from Africa and selling those to protect the leopard, this could be duplicated everywhere, and I don't understand why it's not. Well,
it's another hour.
Wildlife Protection Society of India, Belinda Wright started a community arts program, you know, much smaller scale, but much like that in the Sundarbans. So you know, I
they've
think bit by
changed those
bit,
people's lives there, the Sundarbans, putting fish farms in their front yard because they say more people are killed in the Sundarbans by tigers than anywhere else because they're out collecting crabs. A guy was killed last week, and it was all over the news because the Guardian picked it up. Well, Belinda came in with the people from the Sundarbans in the same village. They walk out their front door, throw their nets out, and catch their fish because they need protein for their family, and it's too dangerous because you just never know when there's going to be a tiger there. And the whole community can make a larger fish pond, you know, that's, you know, shared by all, and they make money, and they don't get killed by a tiger at the same time. So you're changing their life economically for the good in the name of a big cat. That's good.
I'd love to see more of that. Love that.
Well, there's lots of creative solutions, and there's a lot of incredibly dedicated, amazing people that are working on every aspect of this problem. I've met everything from really brilliant Interpol agents to dedicated park guards to, there's a couple of women that are doing amazing work right now and have been for years. Belinda Wright is one of them. Debbie Banks, who is the tiger expert at the Environmental Investigation Agency, is
in London.
In London, is doing a phenomenal amount to both push forward, policy, so that there's stronger laws and better enforcement, and to expose the illegal wildlife trade. Kristen Knoll has been writing, important reports on big cats and tigers for 20 years. Judy Mills has been fighting on the forefront, for tigers, with traffic and WWF and other organizations for many years. I mean, there's people that are really doing it. And
I think Judy Mills' book is coming out fairly soon.
In January.
Yeah. Do I hear a dog snoring?
Could be, but hey, let me tell
old.
you.
He's like 14.
Here's something. All these small things need to be expanded into large things. But there was a report that came out by that organization that Andrew works for, International Forestry Lobby, but it's the International Forestry Group. They do everything from grow trees all over the world to manage forests, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and then this is a worldwide organization. They came out with a report that said all agriculture that is next to intact forests and ecosystems has higher yields, is better all the way around when they check the nutritional value, whatever, whether it's small farms or large industrial farms. And then it said, but we don't know why. There's a big answer. The answer is that when you have an intact ecosystem, even the soil, the water table, the fact that you don't have erosion that takes out everybody's farms and kills people, you know, in monsoon areas. This is important that we find ideas like this and expand them, because I work with local people all over the world in the middle of nowhere, and when like logging companies come and they cut everything down and then the rains come, people go, we just lost our whole rice crop. It's not water, it's sludge that comes down there. We lost our farms. I've seen, you know, torrents with cows and even people in them, whole palm forests, banana plantations coming down because there's no trees left. So to take a report like this that was done by a economic powerhouse, because we grow timber all over the world does, not we as people in the United States, but and say, hey, agriculture-wise, we have a population explosion. We'll be better off if we keep our intact ecosystems, and so will all the animals that live within.
It's just another reason, you know, how protecting forests also benefits humans.
We need to get to these big answers because it's a big picture here, and we'll somehow find a way to connect to all of us.
I think, you know, one thing that's really hard for me is that a number of the big conservation organizations are always putting out this public message that we're saving tigers. You know, tigers are coming back here. They're doing, you know, and I think the public has this really, you know, widespread misperception that tigers are doing well, and it's really not the case. I want to say again that the clock is ticking. You know, we don't have a lot of time to do a lot more research and write a lot more reports, and then, you know, we don't have that time anymore. Tigers are almost gone. If we don't, as a world, act now, one of the most beautiful animals, one of the most iconic animals that's ever walked the face of the planet could disappear on our watch.
We're down to like our last 5 minutes. It's been an hour already. Yeah. What would be the top 3 things that you would ask people to do to protect tigers? I'm sure you could name 100, but what do you think would be the top 3 things that people who might be watching this show could go out today and say, I'm going to do this to save tigers?
Well, you know, writing a letter to the, you know, Secretary of State Kerry would not be a bad thing to do, because international pressure at the top levels could turn the tide on the Chinese demand and the Chinese tiger farms. That's a thing. There's a couple of organizations that are really working with demand and with poaching. Yeah. And since that is such an intense problem right now, you know, they could send money to the Wildlife Protection Society of India, or they could send money to the Environmental Investigation Agency or Wild Aid. Those 3 organizations are doing more for poaching and demand than any other organization right now. What would you say is number 3?
Social media is of vital importance. If Sharon's article made it all the way to the president of China because it ran in the New York Times, and then the New York Times cares that it was tweeted so many times, it's in the top 20 of articles. Social media is vitally important. Going on Wild Aid and looking at some of these videos so they know they're getting hits. It's amazing what these kind of group efforts towards a species that you love will do to the people in charge. Now, we had this one article come out, made it all the way to the top. This guy already has an anti-corruption campaign he's involved in. Maybe it can make a difference. But he get
this
involved.
This guy, meaning the president of China.
Yeah.
The president of China has made anti-corruption one of his top platforms.
Woo.
There's a lot of corruption involved with
endangered species,
well,
specifically
not just tigers, but elephant ivory, rhino, making it
but
through a trade. Yeah. But the farms in China, if all of that stuff, the skins, the bones, other tiger products are slipping out of these farms into an illegal market, that has to be facilitated by government officials or some degree of blind eye, let alone how much, bakshish. It couldn't happen without, corruption. So if it were really taken on as a corruption issue, and if there was enough international pressure, and social media could really facilitate that, China could shut it down in no time. It would not be hard.
Wow.
Education is a big thing, because everything we've talked about here today, we didn't know many years ago, because we're learning about the tiger. That's why we wrote the book. So I'd say read the book.
Yes, buy the book.
But I think the words have more impart. We can emotionally be touched by the small cub in the cage, or the little girl holding the picture of the tiger that was poached right out of a zoo, or the beauty of some of the other pictures. But the information, get educated about how we can save all these big cats around the world, and the problems, be them in the small things, like just people that lose cows, or the big things. How can we protect these landscapes and find the meaning of that huge forest in India and how it protects us on the other side of the world? Education.
Those are all such great thoughts, and I can't thank you enough for joining me today on the Cat Chat Show.
Thanks for having us.
I'll have a show notes page set up, and we'll put links to your book and maybe some of these last few topics that we talked about, as far as the things people could really get out there and do right away to help. I was glad to hear that social media is such an important part of it, because if there's anything that our people can do, it's rock the social media world.
Hey, and it's all true. And we don't have to leave the safety of our homes. But then we have to have that connection of how this all works.
I'll send you a couple of links. There's one of those videos that we did was on battling the wildlife trade in India.
On National Geographic, yeah.
I'll send you the Times story. For an uplifting piece, we'll send you the link to the Kids for Tigers video that we did.
Yeah.
Kids screaming in the streets. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll send you some things.
Yes,
and
the time piece is really good.
Photographs for the website, we'll send those to you as well.
Just small resolution is fine. No more than 600 pixels wide for the format that I've got. That'll be great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Carol.
Carol.
Thank you.
Have a great 4th holiday.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that was a fascinating talk with Sharon and Steve. I hope you will join us in the future on the Cat Chat Show. You can find us on iTunes and on Stitcher Radio. Just look for the Cat Chat Show, or at bigcatrescue.org/catchat. Thanks again, and have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Bye.